Hey, 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 hey.
What's
Alec
going
Velshi.
on?
Here we are. It's happening with Velshi and Rule, and I'm sad to say that our country has so much stressful news going on. We're flooded with questions, but I'm happy to say we're flooded with questions because people care. And I think we should definitely start. And if people have more questions, they can message us at velshirule@ms.now, right? There you go. But yes, and I'll tell you, the war in Iran is a perfect example, right? This is a region, this is something you have huge expertise in. It's not something that I do. And so I have been approaching my show and this effort of lots of people across this country are saying, wait a minute, what's the history? Why are we there? Was the risk imminent? And suddenly people are struggling with gas prices. The thing I'm just obsessed with in this story right now, and I know we're going to cover a lot, is what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And I want you to explain the importance of the Strait. But the point I really want to start and make to our audience is people are worried, people are panicked, people are angry over gas prices going up. And it's obviously, it's got Americans panicked, but you have the White House in the last 72 hours, right? You had Chris Wright, who was our energy secretary. And I think this is so important for people to understand. This is a cabinet secretary. Our energy secretary sent out a video on his official X account. And it was what he said was our Navy escorting an oil tanker, ensuring it across the Strait of Hormuz. Because we've heard from the entire industry, it's way too dangerous. We don't want to do it. Even in the last day, both CNN and the Wall Street Journal have been reporting that Iran is now placing mines. Now, I don't believe that it's more than 10 mines, but even if it's one, even if it's the risk of one, these tankers are saying, no, we are not going to do this. And 2 days ago, President Trump said that these tankers need to kind of man up, get out there, like find some guts and do it. And that's extraordinary to me. Okay. The president of the United States is telling these people who work on oil rigs, get out there because we need to get that oil here. They're absolutely not going to. These companies are not going to do it. Yesterday, the CEO of Aramco said if this isn't resolved soon, the consequences are going to be enormous. And it's interesting. Wait, Ali, I can hear you. I don't know if our audience can hear you. I think our audience still can't hear you. So alas, it is just me. But I want to even share our colleague Alex Talbot was speaking to a bunch of voters down in Florida and just getting their reaction to gas prices going up. Because I'll tell you, in the last 6 days, we're now in day 12 of this war, but in the last 6 days, we have heard on message as though it's White House talking points from everybody out of this White House doing media saying short-term pain for long-term gain, short-term pain for long-term gain. But they haven't explained to the American people how long this short-term pain is, what exactly the long-term gain is, when it's going to come, how it's going to come. And I want to share a bit of some of the conversations our colleague Alex Talbot had on the street with some folks. Watch this.
Do you regret your vote right now?
Well, between him and her, I thought he was the better choice, but honestly, I miss my Uncle Joe. I was a nobody, and I was balling then. Now, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even show you $5 in my pocket. I would just wish he'd keep up on his campaign promise and say he was going to put it under $3. He'd end that war so fast, but here it is, 5 years later, helping his buddy out get his more money, and then never mind charging us Americans all sorts of money for fuel that you just stole from Venezuela.
If I could, speak to the president, I'd just encourage him to finish up this war and get us back to a safe world.
Hopefully this conflict over there will end. It's just unfortunate. At the moment, I'm really out of work.
So these are everyday American voters. And if they're not, if you want to hear from more folks, I want to show a clip of Joe Rogan and his take on our position on this war. And to be clear, I am certainly not saying the Ayatollah who's now deceased or the current regime in Iran is a good thing. By no
No,
means
they're
are they.
murderous.
Murderous, one of the
Yeah.
most evil dictators we've seen in
Oppressive,
modern history.
murderous, fundamentalist, all those things. That's sort of, and that's the difficult part. Like, you can justify all the reasons they're bad. It still doesn't explain why we're in this war.
And that's basically, and I want to share this clip of Joe Rogan, not because I think
Yeah.
Joe Rogan is a expert in terms of Iran, but I want to share this clip of Joe Rogan because his influence with young voters, so many of whom voted for President Trump. I want to share what his current reaction is. Let's play this clip.
Yeah.
What just seems so insane based on what he ran on. I mean, this is why a lot of people feel betrayed, right? He ran on no more wars and these stupid, senseless wars, and then we have one that we can't even really clearly define why we did it.
I mean, it's not more complicated than that. You were talking about the Strait of Hormuz for a second. I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road, right? There's all sorts of things going on at the other side of the world. Who cares? Here's where it matters completely. That all those Gulf countries, Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, the Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, everything they export to go to the world, which is much of it, which is oil, and everything they import has to go out through what used to be called the Persian Gulf. The Americans decided to name it the Arabian Gulf, but it's the same Gulf of water. It's the same water between them. And there's a choke point as it gets out to the Sea of Oman. And that choke point is 21 miles narrow. And in shipping terms, 21
Have you
miles.
ever been there?
I have been there, in fact.
What is it like? Explain to us.
It's a beautiful. I'll put a picture up. This was you know Hussein. Hussein and I. Hussein was both of our producers. So that's Hussein in the back. Me on the right. That's Tara in the middle. She's an Iranian American journalist who was with us on the trip. Next to Tara is a guy named Maysam. He was our handler. And handler is kind of like a spy who watches over you while you're being a journalist. And then JP on the left, who's a cameraman you and I have both worked with.
Who's
now
an
at NBC.
extraordinary international superstar. And there you are, Ali. Your vests go international. Continue.
And the vest, and I'm wearing a vest, exactly. So that's the Strait of Hormuz. It's a beautiful waterway, and it's a shipping channel. But at its narrowest point, the part that you see on the screen on the right there is Iran. On the left, 21 miles away, would be a point in Arabia, generally speaking, Oman. And so 21 miles means one ship goes one direction and one comes out. It's not a lot of space because these are massive, massive ships. So there's a guy, a Greek tycoon, a shipping tycoon, whose specialty is getting oil out in treacherous areas. And he made a lot of money doing this around in the Red Sea when the Somali pirates were there, because he would put armed mercenaries on those boats so that if the pirates came to try and get them, they would just shoot them. But that's not the case here in Iran. There's mines, so having armed guys on the deck don't help. And there's missiles, so having armed guys on the deck don't help. So as a result, most people are not shipping their oil. Some people are. It is very, very hard to get insurance. So their whole point is, if I've got this ship which has a lot of oil on it and somebody downs that ship, I've lost A, my ship, and B, all my oil, and no one's going to pay me for it. So Donald Trump's saying you guys should all be tough and ship your oil. It's like, that's not tough. That just might be a stupid business decision. And so that's the problem. 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas, because natural gas is a big thing we use these days, goes through that channel. And Iran has always threatened when there's a problem that they'll mine it or they'll close it. I would argue, you and I talked last week, the American military has the military might to keep it open, but at what cost? We're escorting oil tankers with military stuff. Now think about this: if you're China, right? You keep talking about taking over Taiwan. America's naval assets are stuck being bouncers for oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. It's not. Could we do it? Yes. Could we keep these ships safe? Probably. It's not really the best use of our taxpayer dollars. It's not really the best use of our Navy.
And it's also, Ali, enormously expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to point out, this war is costing us billions and billions of dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Mark Warner said, and he's a Democratic senator, believes that in the first few days, it cost us north of $7 billion. Okay. So this is costing us at least $1 billion a day.
And that's probably a underestimate, just because that's the actual measure of the artillery and things like that are used. There are all sorts of other ancillary costs that we haven't taken into account. So it's at least $1 billion a day.
So here we are costing costing our government billions and billions of dollars, right? When we're supposed to be in this cutting phase. And now the American people are facing spiked gas prices. You and I did this show 3 weeks ago, the day after the State of the Union. And when the president had to talk about affordability, he can't really talk about wages. He can't really talk about food prices. He can't talk about rent. He certainly can't talk about health insurance. He cannot talk about
So he
car
talked
prices.
about gas.
Gas.
Talked about how it was $1 a gallon in some places.
Which it wasn't, but it was
Correct.
cheaper than it is today.
Yes.
I mean, you had oil on Sunday night touch or maybe it was Monday, touch $120 a barrel. In December, it was 55. Now, here's my issue. The White House, on one hand, says this is going to be short-term pain. But think about the last 24 hours, Allie. Pete Hegseth, our defense secretary, has said on record, this isn't 2003. This is not a forever war. We're not looking to nation build. However, on the same day he said that, President Trump said, we're going to make Iran stronger, better, smarter, more economically sound. It'll be better than ever. And I'm going to have influence to choose the next leader. So
all of which, whether you like it or not, it's nation building.
So how can those two things be true?
Yeah.
And there are definitely Republicans, and I can tell you, I talked to a lot of Wall Street sources. Wall Street contorts itself into human pretzels in order to be optimistic. They want to keep pushing this idea. We're going to be in and out. We're going to be in and out. Even if we pick up stakes and walk out now, what's left in this country, given all that we've destroyed, is chaos.
Yes.
And it was Lieutenant General Mark Hertling who said 2 days ago, one of the most dangerous war games that people in his positions play is they look at what happens to a region, what happens to a country when you leave it in a state of chaos. Then what happens? That's among the most dangerous scenarios.
And I remind people that countries that were left in chaos include Somalia, where we had Black Hawk Down, Libya, where they had training camps for Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan, which is now, 25 years after we decided we were going to fix Afghanistan. It is now back entirely in the hands of the Taliban. Not that the aim wasn't good to try and make these places better. It's just very, 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 very hard to do. And the thing that it's hard to understand if you're not from a place like Iran is that, and this happens in a lot of totalitarian countries, it's not a bunch of guys who run the place and everybody else sort of exists. Everybody in some fashion is tied to the government. In Iran, there's this romantic notion that the Ayatollah is the guy in charge and with the beard and all that kind of stuff. It's sort of a theocracy, but mostly it's run by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And they're an element of the military that does not report through the military structure. Imagine in America, if the military didn't go through their chiefs of staff and that way up to the defense secretary, the Revolutionary Guard reports to the president and to the Ayatollah. So they're not accountable through any normal system. They have 650,000 active troops, 350,000 in reserve. They run businesses. They control the economy. They kind of control the clergy. So how far down would you have to go to change society? Very similar problem occurred in Gaza when the goal was, Netanyahu said, we're going to eliminate Gaza. That'll be when the mission is accomplished. Well, eliminate Hamas. Hamas is so intertwined into society. That doesn't mean people support Hamas. It means that if you're a doctor in Gaza, you work for Hamas. If you're an academic in Iran, you're tied to the Revolutionary Guard. So you can't pick some people out and say, here's your new society. There's no armed opposition, meaningful armed opposition. So when Donald Trump says, take your country back, sounds like a fantastic idea, if only someone knew how that was possible.
We actually have a video question that I think is in this realm. Let's play it.
What are the plans, not just ending the war, but what's going to happen with the politics over in Iran? It's very, very concerning. The individual that just took over, the son of the gentleman that we just killed, he's no better than what his father was. Fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And that's concerning. What's the future going to bring with Iran, with the United States, with Israel, and the 6 other countries that are around there?
Yeah, that gentleman had the perfect question. So Donald Trump says he wants a leader who he approves of. Again, there's no mechanism for that. He's not part of whatever it's worth. There's a committee, a so-called committee of experts, who picked the new leader, and this is who they picked. And it was a bit of a middle finger to America to say we're picking the son of the previous Ayatollah. But we had a chance in Iran in 2015 when I showed you that picture when Hussein and I were there. There was a chance to make this deal. Some of the sanctions were relieved. People were able to trade a little more. They got a little friendlier toward the United States, and there was the moderates in Iran, in the Iranian government, had prevailed. And when we pulled out of the deal in 2018, all of the hardliners said, "See, this is why you guys are idiots. You made a deal with the United States reneged, and they basically threw them all out of office." So Iran is now populated by hardliners and has done much worse stuff since 2015. Right? They had the Zan Zindagi protests, the women protests that they had a few years ago. Then they've had these protests because people don't have any money. And the government is full of hardliners. The government's not full of people who want to make a deal with the West. And to anybody who does want to make a deal, a nuclear deal, these hardliners are laughing at them, saying, "Remember last time you made a deal with America? What happened?" So there's just no infrastructure to change things in Iran. They would have to be. There's a world in which doing these things through negotiation is just better than war. Because what's the number, Stephanie? You've been reporting on them. 140 plus American soldiers injured. We know, is it 8 or 9 soldiers?
8,
dead?
140 are injured. 8 are in serious condition, and we know 7 have lost their lives.
So this is not nothing. These are people's lives. These are actual real service members in America who followed orders and are now dead. So I don't know. I can't tell from what Donald Trump said.
Okay,
because
but then Ali, what do you say to Iranian Americans who are saying this is the most fantastic thing ever? They're praising
Keep
Donald Trump.
bombing,
They're
get
grateful
rid of
to
them.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
What is your answer to those?
And I know many of these people, and I sort of say, does anybody have a plan? Could you just tell me what the plan looks like? Because at least that way I could say, all right, keep bombing and X will happen. There is no logical leader to take over in Iran. There's the Shah's son. Think about this. In 1973, they overthrew the Shah because they didn't want a king. They didn't want a hereditary leadership. They're not really looking for the guy's son, number one. And I kind of think he's mostly just promoted.
Who, of course, is in their mind like a new and improved version, right? It's the
Maybe.
Ayatollah, but young. But I'm saying,
Yes.
New and improved is the bad way to put it. I'm saying you basically got the Ayatollah 30 years younger without a cancer diagnosis with the same, if not more hardline political views. I shouldn't have said
the thing to think about that even the Ayatollah's son who took over is that one of the things behind the revolution in 1979 is they didn't want hereditary leadership. They didn't want the idea that someone's son becomes the leader. So the Shahs did it, the kings did it, then they overthrew the kings, and now the Ayatollahs are doing it. So what does better look like in Iran? And I'm not saying it shouldn't be better. I would love it to be better. I love that country. I love if I could go back there and really enjoy it as a tourist. But for all the expats in America who say this should continue, I would just love someone to give me an answer as to what happens on the other side. If someone could lay that out, I would be all ears.
Okay, then our next question from a viewer is perfect for you. This comes from Chalet Tastics via YouTube. Do you think Trump understands the magnitude of what he's doing right now?
Nope. And therein lies the rub. That's why on Monday afternoon, he said, after saying that he was going to pick another leader and after implying that the newly chosen Ayatollah may not live to see too many days and talking about all the things he's going to do, he says this war is basically over. And I think, Stephanie, 2 or 3 times a day, he changes his mind on that. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. He talks about the war basically being done. Then he talks about the fact that they're going to hit them 20 times harder.
We actually have that sound. I want to.
Yeah, let's listen to it. Let's listen to what Donald Trump says.
Right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
Whatever it takes.
I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion.
On Iran, you called it an excursion. You said it would be over soon. Are you thinking this week it will be over?
No,
You're talking
but soon.
about days?
I think soon.
Okay, and with respect
Very
to
soon.
You've said the war is, quote, very complete, but your defense secretary says this is just the beginning. So which is it, and how long should Americans be prepared
Well, I think
for
you could
this war
say
to
it
last
both.
for?
It's the beginning. It's the beginning of building a new country.
I guess you could say
Okay,
both.
okay, ready? Excursion.
Yeah.
My son is on a snorkeling excursion today,
Correct. That's
leaving
correct.
his hotel on a snorkeling trip.
And no
on spring break.
one will die. That's the difference. An excursion is something on which somebody doesn't die.
Let's sure hope so. I believe he's out
Yeah.
there in the water right now.
Yeah.
But that's one of the problems where, in theory, the spirit of what Donald Trump is doing, lots of people can get behind. And I think that's what excites him. Remember, when I had lunch at the White House a couple of weeks ago, it was clear the president is super happy with what happened with Maduro in Venezuela. He loves to say and show how strong our military might is. And from a military execution standpoint, what happened with Maduro shows the power and strength of our military, that they pulled that off. What we're seeing in Iran is so different. And while
Yes.
that chaos is going on, you have a president and Lindsey Graham saying, Cuba, we're coming for you next.
Yes. Imagine that. There's another war on the horizon. So here's the similarity between Venezuela and Iran. There are a lot of Venezuelan expats who feel the same way. And by the way, a lot of Cuban expats who believe that these sort of communist-y, socialist-y people came in, took our land, threw us out, all that kind of stuff, when we'd like the country back. So Donald Trump goes in and he talked to the State of the Union about that remarkable helicopter, rappelling down the helicopters. Now they snatched Maduro from his fortress and he's now in jail in Brooklyn. And yet there's no regime change in Venezuela. Maduro's number two, an avowed socialist, is de facto the president of Venezuela. So for Iranians, it's the same thing. It's like you go in, you have a so-called excursion for a few days. There's a new Ayatollah, happens to be the son of the Ayatollah, and Donald Trump says it's mostly done. If I'm an Iranian expat who had to leave in 1979, my property was taken, my business was taken by the government, and you're leaving the Ayatollah's son in charge, what happened? What were the soldiers who are dead? What were their deaths for? What are the 140 soldiers who are dead for? There are people dead in Israel. There are people dead in Abu Dhabi. There are people who were killed in Kuwait. There are people dead in Bahrain, and a lot of Iranians dead, including 150 girls, hit probably by one of our missiles. For what? So
I
that
think it's 175.
so the Ayatollah's son could be in charge? That doesn't feel like regime change. So to my friends who really, really want there to be a great, meaningful government in Iran, and I share that view. I really, really do share that view. This isn't getting us there. This is the reason to call it as an incursion is because it started in the morning and ends a few days later. It's not even really a war. So I don't know what to call it. I don't know what to make of it, but I would love to think something is better at the end than it started. And I'm not sure that's the case. And for people who say I'm being pessimistic about this, I remind you of Afghanistan. I remind you of Iraq. I remind you of Vietnam.
I don't want to be pessimistic and I don't want to mislabel what we're doing. What I'd like to do is accurately cover what's happening in Iran. And we are struggling to get coherent, consistent information from this administration. Next question to you, brother, from LR1936 on YouTube. What happened to the oil they took from Venezuela?
Very good question. So oil, in theory, is a world market, right? And Venezuela has greater oil reserves than anywhere on the earth, including Saudi Arabia. They have, over the last 20 years, very similar to Iran, by the way, so degraded their ability to refine their oil to produce it. And the thing in Venezuela is that it's produced in one region of the country and it's refined in another region of the country close to the ports where they go out. So bringing Venezuelan oil online in an efficient manner, Venezuela produces probably about 6% of its capacity of oil. So getting Venezuela back into there's a difference between having a lot of oil and producing a lot of oil. So getting Venezuela there will probably take 5 to 10 years. It's also a different type of oil. So there's a theory that says Iran always threatens to shut the Strait of Hormuz down, but if Venezuela were online, it wouldn't matter. Iran can shut the Strait of Hormuz down. We've got enough oil from Venezuela. That's a 5-year exercise at best. It's just not anywhere close. So there is a lot of oil in Venezuela. We do seem to have struck a deal with them to get access to that oil. Remember, Venezuela was selling its oil to China. China now doesn't have that oil, but guess what? Iran does. So Iran's selling the oil to China. So Iran's actually got a benefit out of this thing. China's not a net loser. Venezuela is probably 5 to 10 years from being online as a major oil producer. But if it works, Venezuela will be the biggest oil producer in the world.
Okay. I know my answer to this next question is you are welcome to watch 11th Hour on MS Now, because this girl talks about them nightly. Blue Jays 3550 via YouTube says, why doesn't the media focus more on Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff's role in this war? Seems like these two benefit more financially with the war. So
Blue Jay is onto something here.
So Blue Jay, first, I invite you to watch the 11th Hour at 11 p.m. Eastern on MS. We actually talk about this a lot. So Steve Witkoff has a long relationship with Donald Trump. He's a real estate developer. His son is now.
But he was an international diplomat for a long time, though, right?
Ali is being sassy. He was not an international.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. Witkoff is not an international.
He never
Jared
worked
Kushner was an international diplomat for a long time.
Also wasn't. Jared Kushner worked for his family business. He was an advisor to Donald Trump in his first term, a senior advisor. And then just when Donald Trump was leaving office, the first time, Jared, separate from then Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, both went to the Middle East to raise money. Jared first raised $2 billion from Mohammed bin Salman.
But that's understandable because Jared Kushner's been handling billions of dollars in money.
No, he has never, ever managed money before. He first got $2 billion. And this is, remember, when there was huge scrutiny over what happened with the killing of Jamal Khashoggi.
He got the $2 billion from all sorts of investors all over the world. It was very diversified.
No, he didn't. 95% of his initial investors were from the Middle East. 5% here. That could have been his own money. I don't know the answer to that. He since is managing a whole lot more money for MBS. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, but Jared Kushner is extremely close with Benjamin Netanyahu. When Jared Kushner was growing up in New Jersey and Bibi Netanyahu would come to New York to visit, he would stay at the Kushners' home, specifically in Jared's childhood bedroom. So Jared has a long relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. Steve Witkoff has developed one. You know, it's amazing that Steve Witkoff, after having just a couple of meetings, said there's no chance to come up with a nuclear deal with Iran. Nothing to be seen here. You know, can't do it. Though he's had meeting after meeting in Russia with Putin and doesn't seem to say Putin is.
There's no chance we're getting to a deal. And just on that point about the negotiating with the Iranians, the negotiations were taking place in Geneva. And they were brokered by the Omanis. The Oman is a great country. It's in the middle of all this stuff. It's not as rich as the other countries. Doesn't have oil, but they are kind of a live and let live kind of people. So they were sort of friendly with the Iranians. They were friendly with their Arab countries in the region, and they were trying to make a deal. And on the Thursday before the war started on Saturday. On the Thursday before the war, the Omani foreign minister said to David Rode, who works for MS Now, "We're getting somewhere here. This looks like we're making progress." And the Iranians said, "Looks like we're making progress." And suddenly there's a war.
Well, that's where we are. And so there are lots of concerns and questions. Like, go back to the president's board of peace that Steve Witkoff sits on and Jared sits on. And it was just 2 weeks ago. The president said the United States will commit $10 billion to it, right? There's talk, and we've heard from Jared's camp, they want to turn Gaza into was it the Monte Carlo of the Middle East?
Yeah. It's got this fantastic plan they've got to. It doesn't seem to deal with the fact that there are, millions of people displaced, but looks like a fantastic place
right
to live.
And
Gaza.
so what we're seeing is you are taking people with careers in real estate development, commercial properties,
and running a failed newspaper here and there. Yeah.
And now
putting them in charge of the most perilous thing
I do think this is important. One of the reasons I don't think you hear more reporting on what's happening with Jared Kushner, it's very hard to cover him. He doesn't work for the government.
He has no job in the government.
Clearance. He doesn't have any official title.
Does not give press availability. You can't interview him generally unless you're a friend. So we have no idea. We have no idea what's going on. There is actually somebody who's accountable to the people who's in the government who I'd love to hear from a little bit more often. That's Marco Rubio. But you don't hear from him because these are kind of informal negotiations. The thing about Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff having these conversations is they're not really on behalf of the government. They're kind of just the golf buddy and the guy who doesn't have a job in the government trying to come up with some deal. Witkoff goes to Russia, and they have 5-hour-long meetings with Putin over and over again. And Putin says, "Oh, I love Mr. Witkoff. Have him come over again." Because every time Putin wastes 5 hours with him, plies him, and nothing happens in Ukraine. This is what happens.
No,
I would
and
love
what's
to
happening
see.
right now in Russia is we're easing our sanctions on Russian oil,
Yep.
gift to Russia,
Yep.
while at the same time there's accurate reporting that Russia is helping Iran locate U.S. targets.
Yes, yes, and of course,
Uh,
Iran has been helping Russia in their fight with
Yes.
these drones.
All right, well, let's get to Big Bank
Big
Fella
Bank
on
Fella.
YouTube. If
If-
this
if
war
this-
puts us into further debt, which it will, what happens? I've never understood how we are in so much debt and what it means. Who do we owe
Oh,
all
what a
this
good
money
question.
to?
What a good. You know what? For next week, Stephanie, let's have that chart of our national debt over time broken down into components, because the messaging out there is that, you know what costs us so much in our debt? It's Medicaid and Medicare and things like that. If you look at the growth in debt since about 1980, war. War is what gets us into debt, number one. So if you're okay with that, that's fine. You may say America's the world's policeman, and we got to do all these wars, we got to nation build, we got to do all that stuff. But there's a bill to be paid, and it gets paid by American consumers, because that's your tax money or that's your program that you were getting benefits from that gets cut. So we pay for it, and our debt goes up.
I don't know where, right, between the big, beautiful bill promising that we're going to have tax cuts, I don't know how they're going to reconcile that, right? We now have a Supreme Court that has overruled the tariffs that said you're going to have to pay this money back, and an administration that says, we're just not doing it.
Yeah,
And the
and so
administration has either spent or earmarked all that money that we brought in to begin with. There's a video question coming at us. Let's answer this.
And my question is about the present war or event that's going on in Iran. And every day we look, and I look, everybody says something different. So I don't really know what the point of it is, and nothing that would come after that, like the answers to any question after, because I realize that we don't seem to really understand what it's for. I thought it was to get a new, a new guy in government, but they did that. They're done. What are we doing?
So,
I couldn't have said it better myself. That was exactly perfect, and a nice little ad for Bread's Bakery there.
but also that's the challenge for this administration. It's the challenge for Republicans running for re-election in November.
But Stephanie,
Even
it's such
if-
an easy thing to have done. It's such an easy thing to have done. Hey, sit around the table, guys. We're going to go to war in 12 hours. What's the messaging? Did you and I not sit in a boardroom before MS Now launched to discuss with reporters what MS Now is as opposed to MSNBC? And we're not bombing anybody. We were just changing the name of a TV channel, but we
Allie,
thought about that for more than
anything
5
a
minutes.
government decides to do, they need to spend, whether it's an extended or a concentrated period of time, dedicated
Yes,
to
explaining.
to
Yes.
the American people, here's this major move that could happen.
But
that
you have
could-
Donald Trump, you have Pete Hegseth, and you have Caroline Levitt, who basically, when reporters do their job and ask questions about this, get some version of "you're stupid," "that's a stupid question." Pete Hegseth, when asked about the death, said, you guys just want to make the president look bad by asking tough questions. Like, no, this is the war. These are actual questions that you have to ask. Who died? Who killed them? Why did they die? What's the purpose of the war? That woman who we just played her question from, those are basic questions. One doesn't even need a focus group. Just take that woman's video, go to the White House, sit around for 5 minutes, think back to the Iraq War. You may believe, and you probably are right, that it was a lie, that it was based on a lie about weapons of mass destruction. You may, if you want to be charitable, say that they were misled. They believed there were weapons of mass destruction. But either way, they made a real commitment to going to Congress and to going to the United Nations and making speeches about why this war was invented. I learned the words yellow cake and all these nuclear things that were going on. Like they had a story. Might have been a lie, might have been the truth, might have been somewhere in the middle, but they felt it important to explain to Congress, the American people, and the United Nations why they were going to war. These guys not only won't give you an answer, their answer will shift every day, and then if you press them on it, they will call you stupid.
I want to make 2 points to that. We have on our lower third right now this Joe Rogan point that says Trump fans feel betrayed by insane war. My question to Joe Rogan, or the people who feel betrayed, I would like them to explain to me, what was the promise that Donald Trump made whether it was in the first term or this term, that he was going to execute on, that he did. Donald Trump is a phenomenal salesman, but like, it's just unclear to me why you're so surprised, right? Like, this is, did we think he was definitely going to go to war on Iran? No, but like Donald Trump committing to a campaign promise, we never saw that happen. But I think the thing that's also important about how when you push this White House and you're asking them fair and difficult questions is that they want to smear the media and they want to say that we're all biased. I just want to take a second to explain there's two very different things. A bias means you have an ideology. You have an ideology that no matter what happens in this world, you're going to contort it to meet your ideology because you have these beliefs. Okay, that's what bias is. That's different from an opinion. An opinion says, I'm going to take an accurate set of facts and based on these facts, form an opinion.
Draw a conclusion.
That is the way sophisticated society works. It is the way business works. It's the way government should work. But right now, when people look at a set of facts and they form an opinion, if that opinion even insults this president or this administration an inch, they smear you and say that you're biased. It is not bias to say these tariffs that the president has put on the United States of America have cost American businesses and have cost the American people. That's not a bias against the president. That's an opinion based on fact. An opinion based on fact is that woman saying, I need someone to explain to me why we're at this war or excursion.
She sounded open to the idea that if you explained it to her,
against the president.
No, if somebody gave her a good reason,
yes,
she might accept it. I will remind you, it's hard to hold this government accountable, but the Defense Department in particular has taken press passes away from all press who wouldn't conform to a rule that said that they will not report anything about the Defense Department that is not cleared by the Defense Department, which is what the Israeli military does.
That's not reporting. That's
no, it's
reading
not reporting.
a press. That's reading a press release.
Some people agreed, and those are the people who now fill the press rooms. These are all pro-Trump organizations. And the person who Donald Trump called stupid the other day for asking the question about the war was Peter Doocy, who works for Fox News. Jen Psaki will tell you Peter Doocy took a piece out of her every single day. He is a Fox News reporter. And he is the one who Donald Trump called stupid. So we're done calling liberal media stupid. We're now actually even calling conservative media stupid because anybody who does their job as a reporter is now stupid.
This makes me, I want just to bring in our guest in a second, but this makes me honor and appreciate and respect the extraordinary journalism that is existing because every damn day, whether it's MS Now or the New York Times or the Washington Post or CBS or ABC or NBC, we are seeing extraordinary reporting happen from reporters who are covering this Pentagon and getting the story right. And they're doing it without having a press pass to get in the building.
Yep, totally agree. You want to bring our guest in? We got a great guest today. There he is. Adam.
How you guys doing?
Adam Mochler's with us. We're so happy to have you. Thank you for being with us.
I'm incredibly honored to chat with you guys. This will be a really good conversation. I was really liking the vibe you guys were having before, and really good answer to that lady's question. The clip that you played, really good answer.
And a great question, right? This is not, she didn't have, that wasn't a gotcha question from her.
She was open-minded. She was so open-minded.
If you tell me what this war is for and what the goal is on the other side, I might like it, I might not like it, but at least I'll understand it. That's the problem we've got here. And actually, it's instructive of a lot of things that have gone in this administration where you don't know what the end game is, whether it's tariffs or whatever the case is. But tariffs, in theory, we're not killing anybody. Now we've got a war, but we've also got, we don't get vaccines for measles for kids. So that does kill people. I think I don't understand it. Adam, you help me make sense of this. Why are we doing this over and over again? How does the government get away with just not telling people what?
You want me to make sense of the Iran war for you?
Well, you talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or I want you to do that and make sense to us, sort of this Joe Rogan response, like, we're shocked. This is crazy. I can't believe this.
Yeah. So, okay, just to back up, something that's really been bothering myself, and I think a lot of young people watching this conflict break out, is not only the contradictory answers coming from the administration on every single issue, but watching them mortgage away my generation's future by adding more and more debt, as you guys were talking about 1 minute ago. They pay $1 trillion per year just on the interest for our debt. We added $8 trillion throughout the forever wars where I was like 4 years old, 5 years old or whatever. And now we are sitting there watching them repeat the same mistakes as Lindsey Graham is frothing at the mouth on Fox News. And as they gaslight us and say that we don't actually have enough money for healthcare. We can't actually extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. They say we can't invest in education or in this, but we all of the sudden have money to bomb girls' schools if the girls' school is in Iran. So that bothers a lot of young people. I think that framework is very strong. And unfortunately, it's been hijacked by the Nick Fuentes America First types. They kind of take it to an isolationist path.
What does that mean?
Like Nick Fuentes and his America First, their cohorts will hijack the idea that we shouldn't be in forever wars to try to turn America into an isolationist country when that's not the real framework. The real framework is self-determination. The people of Ukraine should be supported because they are fighting a war where they can, determine their future. I have a few different criteria. I have 2 criteria for funding wars. The first one is, are they the good guys? And the second one is, will our funding them help change the result of the war? So with Ukraine, I truly believe they are the good guys. For the second prong, I truly believe that us helping them or funding them will help them in this war. The Nick Fuentes types want to regress from all of that. They want to stay super isolationist. And we just need to make sure that our language isn't hijacked when we're saying that, hey, I think we should put America first as well, but not in the way that Nick Fuentes wants.
100%. I think that is a really good point. Don't let that be hijacked.
America First is different from America alone.
Yeah.
If it's America alone, we lose our position as the world superpower.
Funding Ukraine is putting America first. Helping our allies is putting America first. But to answer your second question about Joe Rogan, I think that a lot of people who are impressionable, like Joe Rogan, I think he's very impressionable, they view Donald Trump as a change agent. And a lot of young people in my generation, through our most formative years, didn't remember the conning he did throughout his first term. His first term, it was all just lies and cons. So then young people saw, oh, there's this orange guy who might be a change agent for the second time. I don't really remember the first time. And he ended up betraying people on affordability, on starting new wars, on every single issue. I think that Joe Rogan just liked, you know what the word I always go to is decisive. The Joe Rogan sphere, they want a leader who's decisive. For everything I dislike about Donald Trump, he is decisively dumb, but he's decisive. For everything that I adore about Kamala Harris, she was rather cautious during her campaign. So I think that was a framework that a lot of people looked at it through.
Except the confusing part this week is that, or since the beginning of this war, which is 1.5 weeks now, is that Trump seems to be indecisive. Normally he's decisive, but it's
Ali, that you're making Adam's point. Like you're making Joe Rogan's point, because this is why Joe Rogan fans were attracted to Donald Trump, because he
was
just
decisive.
sort of, in their words, like he does tell it like it is.
At least he does something. At least he does
and
something.
he says things that maybe are inarticulate, but he just, he tells it to you plain. You know where he stands, right? That's what we heard over and over again. And it is true that if you sat down with Kamala Harris, there was a lot of words and connections and words on top of words and hope and synergies that you were like, but what does that mean? Right. And people were exhausted. And I'm not giving, people were exhausted by the overcautious and carefulness of the Democratic Party. And you and I have talked about this so many times. Like, Democrats don't want to run a victory lap until every kid in the country has a cupcake. And like, boys and girls, not every kid's getting a cupcake. You got to take the win and move on. But now Donald Trump, he was so decisive. We're in a word salad bonanza every day. What he says is different from what Vance says, which is different from what Pete Hegseth says. And then you got Caroline Leavitt trying to serve it all up and turn it into a cake by 4 p.m. Just before.
So, Adam, here's a question I have for you. In this, because we're in primaries now, and Democrats have gone through a whole lot of hand wringing about being progressive versus being moderate. And it does seem to me, to the point that Stephanie just made and the point that you just made, the Democrats who are most likely to succeed and who have been succeeding, it's almost beside the point where they are on the political spectrum of Democrats, and more to do with the fact that they are prepared to go out there, be decisive, and fight.
Yes, decisive and forward-looking. For the past decade, the entire Democratic Party has been unified in our opposition to Donald Trump, which is good.
Yeah.
We should be unified against authoritarianism, but we need a forward-looking vision for the country. So we can point to specific candidates like James Tallarico, who won not on an anti-Trump message. He is anti-Trump, but his message was forward-looking. It was anti-corruption. How can we take corruption out of the government and rewire it so special interest groups aren't benefiting disproportionately? I think that forward-looking message really resonates with a lot of people, and it takes away the risk averseness of Democrats to change up the system. Like we were the status quo. The Democratic Party was the status quo, which is not something that you want to see. So
A lot of young people think that way. They look at it, and they also look at the people who are 80 to 100 years old who are still running for office and wonder about that.
yeah, I mean,
But-
sorry, we're gonna say.
No, you.
I was going to say, like, look at some of our leaders in Congress, who I still have a lot of respect for, but I mean, like Chuck Schumer doesn't resonate with a lot of people my age. So we need people like the Zohran Mamdanis or like the James Tallaricos, but that doesn't mean that that works everywhere. Zohran could not win an Andy Bashir seat, and maybe vice
Correct.
versa. So we need a large tent of
Yes,
different
but the
ideas.
tent needs to
This
look
young
like
man
people who are
is so
fighting.
smart, Ali Velshi.
I know, I love it. I love it.
Okay,
This show got a lot
but
better ever
that's
since we started bringing young people on it, Stephanie.
Right. There's no one's ever going to confuse Zohran Mamdani with a Republican ever.
Yeah.
How vexing is it when you've got people like James Tallarico that embrace faith, or you have people like Governor Wes Moore who have made the central focus of their messaging about patriotism, because sort of family values faith and being a patriot are two concepts that Republicans have successfully, I'm going to say, hijacked
Yep.
over the last few decades. And to watch two politicians like a Westmore or Tallarico take those ideas, take those ideals back and embody them in pretty extraordinary ways, how vexing is that for their Republican counterparts?
It's amazing. Just to build on that, we've ceded ground in a lot of topics where we didn't need to. So Obama had a really strong immigration message, like a really strong pro-America, forward-looking immigration message. Then Trump had a very strong immigration message. I would argue that Biden kind of lost it, especially around the end of his term. Biden wasn't quite articulating any immigration message that could captivate people. And due to that, Donald Trump had all of this playing field to pull the country to the right. And then we can use that same framework with what you were just talking about with what issue? Well, with the affordability, with healthcare, with all these things. Yeah. So having
We actually have we have a video question that came to us yesterday from someone in Bryant Park on affordability. Let's watch it.
I feel like there's been a lot of talk about grocery prices rising recently, and I'm kind of just wondering when we can expect to see those go down, and if politicians who are making these decisions that are lowering grocery prices are actually going to follow through with that promise.
Ooh, when was that recorded?
Looks like that sweet girl went
Yesterday.
to press. So that poor girl just spent $12 on a smoothie. So she's like, yeah, stuff's too expensive.
You have to know that was recorded yesterday because this is New York, and 2 days ago it was like full snow and all that kind of stuff. So this is the
I was
first time
in
it's
New
looked
York
like
last. I was in New York last night for CNN, and they kept saying it was false spring. I'd never heard that before. False spring. Is
We're
that a
not
thing
familiar
everyone
with
says?
that network. I don't know what you're
Okay.
talking about.
Okay, but either way, I
So
forgot
it's
there's
I think it's a
competition.
great question because when you go back to Zohran Mamdani, and this is the part in which he's very much like Trump, except he's got better discipline than Trump. He understood that for young people who live in New York City, where Curtis Sliwa, who was running against him, was all about you're going to die in the subway. He understood that most young people in New York don't actually think a subway ride is existential, but they actually think their rent is existential. Their ability to rent something is existential, or at least existential to their ability to live in the city. Their ability to buy a house is existential. So he stuck to a message about here's what it is, but to deliver on that, lower groceries, lower bus fares, and lower rent is a big undertaking that Zohran Mamdani had probably better be spending 18 hours a day on right now.
Yeah, and it seems like he's making progress on delivering on certain things. The reason I asked what day that was filmed is because, I mean, since this war has broken out, we've already seen a massive spike in gas prices, and due to energy prices increasing, you can reasonably assume other things will increase in price. So the economy is only getting worse. This is after Donald Trump's tariffs cost American families $1,000 in 2025. It's supposed to be like $1,300 in 2026.
But you're getting $700 back.
Hopefully, I
It's a
don't know if
great
I'm
deal.
getting anything.
Okay, the reason what Adam is saying, I think, is so crucially important. Every single topic we have covered, these are meat and potatoes, life or death in some situations, issues for the American people.
Yeah.
This morning, the president was outside the White House before he headed to Ohio and was talking about the SAVE Act and was sure to say, we're looking to do this from a voting perspective, but we're also going to get in there no transgender, no boys
Yes.
can play girls sports, and no gender mutilation, reassignment surgery for children. Okay. These issues that are way out in the hinterland that impact the tiniest fraction of the American people. Okay. He's going back to this culture war wedge issue. You can address culture war wedge issues when people can afford to put gas in their car to go to work, when AI hasn't wiped out their jobs so they can go to work, when they don't live in a town where the electricity costs are jacked up so high. And so the president, where he's standing outside the White House being asked questions about a war, and he's taken us to a volleyball game in East Brunswick, New Jersey, where a trans 12-year-old played in a club sport.
And then he has the goal to say the economy is A++++, when that's clearly not how most Americans feel.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
A+++ until you reach the end of the driveway at Mar-a-Lago.
but Adam, this is a very important point. When you're surrounded by 13 billionaires on a daily basis and have access to all the other billionaires, Stephanie and I are economics journalists. We have no beef with people making money, and we have no beef with people making lots of money. And we love the fact that people come from all over the world to America because they feel like if they can build a better mousetrap, they can get rich out of it, and we've got public markets that'll fund them. We love all of that stuff. But there is something perverse about the fact that there is no one in Donald Trump's circle at all who could have a meaningful conversation with him about gas prices or egg prices or affordability or how that actually has an impact on the average person.
Even if they could, they're not willing to have an honest conversation with him about it.
Yeah. And he's entirely like, he's caught in this massive bubble where he doesn't have any actual interaction with the average experience of Americans. And I think that manifests in the way that he talks about the economy every single day. I mean, he's going based off of his gut instinct and not any actual indicators.
Yeah, well, when he started talking about
experience for young people who were excited about Donald Trump, young men like you, not necessarily like you, young folks who were exhausted by what they considered oppressive or strangling wokeness, who didn't like the ways of the Democratic Party, didn't connect with Kamala Harris, felt like she spoke in word soup. What's their lived experience today?
I had a friend who is vaguely liberal. He's largely liberal. He's like socially liberal. He grew up in a family that's liberal. He called the Democratic Party suffocating like a year ago. And I think that was a good word. He felt suffocated, even though he agrees with a lot of the tenets of the Democratic Party.
Wait, here's what I want you to tell that friend that someone gave to us one day. The Democratic Party is like the HR department at work.
Yeah.
You're like, yes.
They are two things: finger waggy and risk averse. We talked about the risk averse earlier, but I swear they'll wag your finger in your face. Like, I had someone email me earlier and they were like, please stop calling Trump the president. Please just call him Donald Trump. I'm not going to watch your show. And I'm like, okay, you got to take a step back here for 1 second.
But that's silly. Like, that's silly when people say, those are the same people who 2 weeks ago, when I had the opportunity to go to lunch at the White House, people said, how dare you go to the White House? What do you mean, how dare you go to the White House?
So
right?
really,
If you're going to honestly cover the president how you do, he's the president. You're not going to say he was elected president. And to do all of our jobs, you're going to say he's the president. I'm sorry.
people used to say the same thing when I would cover Charlie Kirk. They'd say, why do you give air to Charlie Kirk? And I'd be like, listen, Charlie Kirk is in the air right now. This was like a year ago. They have both chambers of Congress. They have the presidency. I'm not platforming Joe Rogan by covering what he's saying. I do not like when people say that. So just take a step back. If I put myself in the shoes of a young dude who weren't super political, like if I were apolitical and I were looking at both sides, I would find the Democrats to be effing annoying. I would honestly think they were annoying. And now we're getting better at that. We're getting way better at being personable and real. But Zohran Mamdani's success with young people is clearly mapped onto the way Donald Trump had success with young people. They ran as change agents who broke the system. And I think a lot of conservatives miss that when they say, like, how could all of these young socialists vote for Zohran? It's not even that. Why is there confetti falling right now?
That is wild. I don't know how.
Oh, it's when I do that.
You know what? We do that for winning guests. When guests give good answers, they get that. When they give bad answers, the floor drops out and then they're off.
But in the simplest
at this point that Adam, I want you to elaborate on it. What people would say to you when you covered Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Like, why are you giving him airtime? You're giving him airtime because that young man had enormous influence over millions and millions of people. When in the last election, I was doing a show once and I was talking about how I have a young white male son who is eligible to vote. And he doesn't feel like the Democratic Party includes him or speaks to him. And I had a guest on TV who very angrily almost wanted to walk off and say, I will not answer your son. I am not defined by the patriarchy. He will not change my view. You're right. I'm not asking you to give my son a party, and I'm not asking you to feel bad for him. But if Democrats want to win, you got to try to get every freaking vote that's out there.
Yeah, it's like we've become so inclusive. We've circled back to becoming exclusive to certain groups. And I hate being like being the guy that's like, oh, okay, here's the reality of it. When I talk about a lot of this stuff, I'm like, listen, my mom is somebody who is an IO psychologist, and she got her PhD. She studied women in the workplace. Women have a very hard time in America, a very hard time in the workplace compared to men due to small things. Like my mom was saying that I wore a blazer on TV twice in a row. And she was like, if a woman tried to wear a repeat outfit, they would be at her throat. So it's very different. But just because that is true, and just because we're calling this out, does not mean that we have to like exclude men or shush men or tell them to shut up or whatever. I think that there's a reality where we can be inclusive. We can have a message that everybody resonates with without pushing people away. To go back to the Charlie Kirk piece really quickly.
Look at Allie and I smiling. It's like we want to adopt you.
It's like I'm a little kid. That's so really quickly though, with the Charlie Kirk thing, when I started doing this when I was 21 years old, it was going to Trump rallies. I grew up in Indiana and I drove to Iowa for my first ever Trump rally during the caucuses. Where'd you go to college? I went to IU for 1 year, then DePaul for 1 year. Then I dropped out of college actually, because I'm building this media company. Kind of like Charlie Kirk.
You're doing it, brother.
We're building it. But really quickly, I went to these Trump rallies, and my first ever Trump rally, I was kind of nervous. I was 21. I had no platform. I was interviewing these supporters, and I went in with the thesis that Trump supporters are very winnable. Like these are human beings who just want to have conversations with someone on the other side. One of my most viral clips is a Trump supporter saying, let's stop funding Ukraine and put America first. And I said, but funding Ukraine is putting America first. We're protecting an ally. It's helping our economy and our military, and we're stopping Vladimir Putin in his tracks. And this guy, by the end of the clip, went, wait a minute. I never had it explained to me like that. Kind of like the woman that we played earlier that was just genuinely asking. So when I see commenters say, don't reach out to MAGA, don't reach out to the 78 million people, 78 million Americans who are probably just
a third of all eligible voting Americans.
Yeah, like I have so many friends.
Adam, that is the beauty and the magic of you. Yeah. And the answer is to go to that rally, to speak to that neighbor, to pause and not... People who want us to be divided, we have to realize they're bad actors. Yeah. They don't want democracy to thrive, right? They want us this way. If you ignore this idea that there are silos and break through them and go to that rally. But by the way, lots of people, Allie and I have both gone to Trump rallies. Lots of people go to Trump rallies because it's a social event. They happen in rural parts of the country where there's not necessarily a movie theater or a state fair or a concert or a sporting event that you could afford a ticket to. But you can go to a Trump rally and you can be in community.
You know,
and the answer is exactly what you're doing. It's to be in community and speak to people.
Last July, it was July 4th. Was it July 4th when we had the Army parade, Donald Trump's birthday parade? Yes, so I went to cover that, and it was you're penned in. Once you get in, you're locked in with everybody else who was there. I had far more people take selfies with me and say thanks for coming. Like, thanks for at least being here and talking. And I had, like you said, Adam, I had really good conversations with people, many of whom said to me, I don't think we were on the same, we're on the same page politically, but thanks for being here. And, realizing that, hey, once you get past your partisan politics, there's an entire life that you share. We breathe the same air and we drink the same water. I do think there's much more room than a lot of people allow for.
I want to build on this really quick.
Back to a point I made before Adam joined us. There is a difference between listening to a set of facts and forming an opinion and having an ideological bias.
Correct.
I also
when people go.
No, sorry, I did not mean to cut you off. I was going to say there's also a big difference between the internet and reality, and that's exactly what I found with all these rallies. When you're online, everybody's at each other's necks. Everybody's wanting to take the other person down. I have people saying crazy stuff to me online. And then anytime I talk to someone in person, it's like the sweetest uncle or aunt from a different reality. It's like if my aunt ended up being Republican instead of liberal. And they always, I think it's my baby face. I disarm them really quickly because they're always like, oh, I love having this conversation with you. And then from there, I pull them over to the liberal side and I say, you're with us now or whatever. But the reality
is not about your politics. You're speaking to them because you're coming from a place of decency and compassion. And if we are not decent, we are nothing.
And a lot of people, unfortunately, in my audience would say that these conversations are pointless or a waste of time. I will always push back against that. This country was founded on conversation in the same exact way, disagreement. Now, I think that Donald Trump has sort of co-opted any political decency in this country. And that's why I get where they're coming from. They don't want Donald Trump's style of politics to be interacted with or whatever. But I think that many of our fellow Americans can be chatted with. I know they can. Because we have
privilege we have.
Strangers are friends we have not met yet. Take the time to have an open mind and an open heart. I think there's one more thing we want to do before we go. Allie, I'm going to let you lead it.
Adam, did you see this McDonald's CEO trying the Archburger?
I saw memes about it, but
okay, so I saw it before the meme. I saw it when he actually just posted it and did it. And I thought to myself, I don't know much about social media or memes. I'm very bad at it, but this is going to become a meme. Like this guy.
I will say, I do think that McDonald's is delicious.
So the Arch is a big burger. It's a giant burger. It's bigger than a Big Mac. It's 2 quarter pounders and extra stuff. And he takes this like delicate little bite of it, and it definitely seems like a guy who's never eaten at McDonald's.
Let's play
ever.
it. Let's play it.
Let's take
Here
a look
we
at
go.
it.
First, holy cow. God, that is a big burger. All right, the moment of truth. That is so good. That's a big bite for a big arch.
Allie, I want to see you recreate that next week. I want to see you recreate that video next week.
Other than the fact that I'm gluten intolerant, so I'll have to replace a bun. But it was I love that, and I credit to the guy. I think he was being genuinely who he is. I don't think he's McDonald's all that much, but it was a fun little thing, and it's all memes everywhere now. Every CEO of every burger place and everybody on Instagram.
Look at Adam. The point of what we had, the point of social media, or the success that exists on social media, is authenticity. And that right there is the opposite of that.
It's like when Trump thinks his tariffs are doing way more than they actually are. And then it's just actually a small little, it's like, what are we even doing here? But that's a funny, didn't that start a war between other CEOs and they started taking bites of their sandwiches?
Every CEO of every burger chain is now doing something like this. And all of them, whether they like it or not, look like they actually like or eat their burgers on a regular basis. So, although I did notice they're all like slim guys who definitely, because they say, oh, I eat this for lunch every day. It's like, no, you definitely don't eat that double burger and french fries. And
I love the free market, baby.
I love the free
every
market.
CEO taking a small bite of their burgers. Sounds great.
Adam, it is great to have you here. Thank you.
You just ended our show saying you love free markets. There are no two hosts that you could say that to that would be happier than young Ali Velshi and I. Adam, thank you for joining us. And
love
for
you
who joined us today, thank you for your questions. Thank you for participating. Adam will be back with us soon, but of course, Ali and I will be here next week. But between now and next week, make your videos, send us your questions, especially that lady who's in front of the bakery. I mean, gosh, I want her to become a meme. She's a star.
Velshi Rule at ms.now. We will see you next week at 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Stephanie will see you every night at 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. Have yourselves a great week.
Adios, amigos.